The discussion should be in the African American community. How can we talk about sexuality? How can we talk about homosexuality in a way that it creates space for men to say, I'm gay. I don't want to date a woman. You know, a single man come walking up in grandmama's house without a woman year after year. The first thing people want to say, it must be gay. And so I think that if we create space to have productive dialogue about homosexuality, is that we will have less men on the down low. I don't think men want to be on the down low. I think they're on the down low because they have no choice, because their backs is against the wall, because the black community has not really talked about homosexuality. And I think that's been a big issue in our community. Now, and this is the other issue. Instead of black women running around here trying to figure out if my man is sleeping with another man, she should be thinking about, how do I keep myself safe? How do I take care? Because it really is about, how do I take care of me? It's not about what my partner is doing. So whether your partner is with Bob or with Barbara, you are keeping yourself safe and free. And that's about giving women some control over their bodies and their lives. You don't have to lay down with a man without a condom if you don't want to.
Sure.
You make a choice. We make a choice. And so let's not, yeah, there's a problem. I'm admitting there is a problem with men on the down low. But I think the discussion is moving in a direction that's unhealthy for us.
These days, you founded and president of In the Paint for big men and women basketball camp. What brought the camp about? You know what? When I was a kid, I was always taller than the rest of my classmates. So being tall was always something I had to deal with. And I began to reflect on what it must be like for today's kids that are tall, that are good basketball players, but also they just have to deal with what it means to be tall in our society. So I founded In the Paint on the principle that we would teach big kids how to be good basketball players, the tall kids, but also help them to develop as human beings and to carry their size with confidence and to set big goals and big dreams. No one did that for me when I was a kid. I mean, the idea wasn't even out there. So it's a chance for me to help. Really. You know what? I never really thought about it like that, the stigma of being big. Usually you think, okay, this guy could beat me up or he could play ball. You know, so people either scared of you or also that big dumb thing. Yeah, exactly. You know, that big dumb thing. Just because you're big, you somehow you're mentally inferior. Exactly. So that's a stereotype you're familiar with? Definitely, and I found that to be the case, and I was blessed in that. You know, I studied, I went to school, I completed it. You know, and in some ways, to be honest with you, I think I tried to counter that stereotype. I think that I picked up a drive to be smart, maybe, to kind of disprove people that big people are dumb. And I go out to kids, and sometimes I talk at schools and so on and so forth, but to keep the athletics in its proper perspective, it's a great goal, but at the same time, they have to bear in mind that your chances of becoming a brain surgeon are 1,000 times more likely and more attainable than being the last man on any bench on a professional ranks. Wouldn't you agree? I do, and if there's one thing that I don't like about professional sports, is it doesn't show the kids the hard work that it goes into to get there. So we never get to see Michael Jordan long hours in the gym by himself or with another player shooting free throws for 3 hours or taking 300 jump shots. They don't show the sprints, the mile, the running, being in the weight room every day for an hour and a half. Kids don't see that. They see him on the court, flying up the court, dunking the basketball and thinking, I want to do that. And there's a disconnect between the work and effort it takes before you produce that kind of result. What advice would you have for any aspiring radio personalities or now authors, seeing as though that you're a published author now?
I think with anything, I think that there are about 3 things that you have to be successful at anything. I think you have to have a strong work ethic, and I think that that's one thing that African Americans are lacking as a whole. I was reading somewhere where, like, the #1 reason that African Americans get fired is because they're late to work. I think you have to have a strong work ethic, especially if you're working for somebody else. But maybe even more so if you're working for yourself, because then you have to you have to kind of right. You have to control your own thing. But strong work ethic. I think you have to be persistent. I think in anything that a lot of times people get told no one time, and then they'll go sit down somewhere and be done with it. And if I had taken that, or if a lot of people, especially in an entertainment arena, we'd never be anywhere. I mean, because with my boss, just as a quick example, with GCI where I am now, I called my boss every week for a year. And he didn't know who I was when I got to Chicago. He never called me back. He never talked to me on the phone.
Really?
And I just came up to the station because I happened to be in Chicago on the way to another job. And I just was like, let me go up and say hi. And he didn't even know who I was. And I popped in my tape, and he was like, where have you been? And he hired me that day. But if I had just gotten upset because he'd never returned my phone calls, I would never be in the position that I'm in now.
And I think people really need to hear that.
Yeah, you have to be persistent. I mean, I'm not, and I say I stalked him, but you have to do it properly.
Sure.
But you know, you have to be persistent because it's hard out there. It's hard out there in any field.
Absolutely.
I mean, and you have to get an education. I think no matter what you're going to do, you have got to learn about that. I mean, radio is a craft. You know, people think we just get up to the station, we just talk on the mic, and that's it. I mean, we learned how to do this and what the format is and what the legalities are. So you have to learn and be educated about whatever you're going into. Writing is a craft, and you have to learn about that and learn the different techniques and the different ways to make a character come to life. I mean, everything you have to be educated in about what you're going to do.
What I'm most proud of is the leadership that I've shown in the office. About 8 years ago, I went to Dick Devine and told him that we had a problem, that we had convicted innocent men, no doubt in my mind, and that we had taken false confessions, and not just our office, but other offices. So I conducted a study across the country to try to determine how is it that a young man's walking down the street one day, and the next thing you know, he's serving life or on death row for a crime he did not commit. I looked for patterns, and I found patterns. And I put together a training program for prosecutors across the country, how to spot false confessions and how to avoid wrongful convictions. I implemented mandatory videotaping of interrogations here in Cook County, which was a sea change in the law. Mandatory videotaping of interrogations for all homicide cases. I had to go across the county and across the city to get that done. And recently I led a very vocal and public crusade to get fair pay for prosecutors, and I'm proud to report to you that it was a success.
There are good fathers out there who are well-meaning. So what would you, is there any further advice you would have to women who may do that?
Right. Well, that's what I really do tell mothers to remember, that at some point they loved this man. I don't care if it was a one-night stand, there was something good in him that you saw. And your kids will ask you questions. You know, if dad's not around, they're going to say, who's my daddy? Tell me about my daddy. And the last thing you want to say is your daddy ain't no good. Because if you start saying that, the kid's going to think, okay, so half of me is no good. And then that gives them license to misbehave because you just told them they ain't no good. So instead what you need to do is, whatever it is about that man that you think is, your father's handsome, your father's funny, your father's smart, your father's tall, your father's cute, whatever. You know, I love his eyes, whatever. You have to say these positive things to your children because you're talking to them about half of their genetic makeup. Why does my dad not come around, Mom? And let's hope it's not because of Mom, because if it's because of Mom, she needs to check herself. And Mom needs to make sure that she's not the person who's standing in the way. Don't let, you know, even something like, well, he doesn't pay, kids don't need to know anything about child support. If the man's not paying child support, that shouldn't have anything. Sorry, Mom, that has nothing to do with the fact whether you're going to let the father see the kid, because you're not letting the father see the kid, you're letting the kid see the father. So it's not about him, it's about your kid. I mean, you want your kid to be completely raised by both parents. You want them to be able to have the love, the visitation, the financial resources from both parents. Well, if they don't have the financial resources, at least let them have, you know, the love and the presence. You know, at least they're having something, because kids know when something's, you know, when they're not being loved and supported, if you will, in whatever ways by that other parent, and you don't need to be letting them think that it has something to do with them. So that's what I encourage mothers to do, is just think from your child's point of view. This is not about you. This is about your kid. How do you want your child to grow up? Do you want your child to grow up with, hang-ups? We're already going to have some hang-ups anyway, but do you want them to be hang-ups that you gave them because you didn't allow them to see the father? That's shameful. No mother, that's not love. That's selfishness, and selfish ain't nothing, is no part of love.